It is Mystery Man here again. Welcome. We are today reading Murder in the Early Morning, written by Tom Fowler. Let's start. Melody Cairns was usually the first person out of bed in the mornings. However, on this cool spring morning in Oklahoma, she was still in bed at 9. All the other Cairns households slept late that day, so they would say, and did not notice Melody's absence from the kitchen until Nancy, the last person to arise, voiced her concern. I fell to Vernon Melody's husband of 24 years to return to the bedroom and check on his wife. He found Melody, a handsome woman of 44 years, dead and mostly unmarked. The only noticeable evidence of foul play was a small round head wound near her temple, crusted over with a small amount of dried blood. Let's attempt the mystery. She looked like she was peacefully asleep, which Vernon considered was quite unlike her. As she was usually a noisy, restless sleeper, Vernon, before allowing himself to panic, felt her cold wrist. There was no pulse. It was evident she had been dead for several hours. The coroner would later say that she had been dead for approximately 7 hours, placing the murder at some time around 2 in the morning. Mercifully, the murder weapon, later discovered to be an ice pick, missing from the kitchen, killed her quickly. There was no blood on Melody's body or bedsheets, but the case stumped the family and police. Several weeks passed and spring gave way to a hot summer. Vernon invited his sister-in-law Constance, a widow who lived in Texas, to visit for the first time. Her sister had been murdered. Constance had been vacationing, staying with Karen's family the week that her sister died. She was nearly inconsolable, and Vernon sent her home after Melody's funeral. Constance had little use for Vernon, whom she suspected of onanism and felt didn't apply himself to his career and family as he should, but she appreciated the chance to see her niece and nephew again. Her last connections to her sister and Melody had been close when they were children. Even with the 7-year age difference, they had shared a bedroom in their family's small East Texas farmhouse when growing up, and also shared all their hopes and dreams and secrets. Constance recalled those days with fondness, but did not entirely miss them, for Melody suffered lifelong sinus trouble and snored loudly, making sound sleep impossible. For until the day she was murdered, the Constance had extremely sensitive hearing only made matters worse, as she too experiencing lifelong sleeping problems. Still, they had more than sisters, they were soulmates. Melody's death had been extremely hard on her. The morning she arrived, just after breakfast, Vernon gathered all the family into the spacious den. It was the first time since that horrible day they had all been together in one room. After a few minutes of awkward small talk, Vernon cleared his throat and started. One of us murdered Melody. He could barely utter the words and hated what the children must be thinking and going through. But the police were stumped by the case. It was apparent that they would go nowhere in the investigation unless one of the family remembered a detail about the night they'd previously forgotten. Vernon explained that the police had encouraged him to bring them together and talk about Melody's murder again. With Constance present this time, he was not really confident any of them would remember something previously overlooked, but wanted to give it a try. He then asked, did anyone see or hear anything out of the ordinary the night she died? The Cairns house was a big 2-story and well-insulated. Sound did not carry well, and Vernon was not surprised when nobody replied in the affirmative. John said, I came home around midnight. I had been out with friends. All the lights were out, and I assumed everyone in bed. I went to the den and watched TV. It must have been 3 or so before I went upstairs to bed. Nancy offered. I was on the phone in my room when the door closed. Beth and I didn't quit talking until 2:30 or so. Nancy gave her father a guilty look, as she knew he disapproved of her late-night calls. with her talkative best friend Beth Jameson. Vernon then turned to Constance, barely hiding in animosity. He asked, "And what about you?" Constance smiled thinly and answered, "I went to bed before midnight and didn't see or talk to anyone again until the next morning." She paused and then said to John, "I thought about coming downstairs to watch television with you, but I could tell you that you were watching one of those Friday the 13th type movies. You all know how I hate violence with guns and knives." Turning to Vernon, she said, "I didn't hear anything from your room all night long." Constance and Vernon looked at each other with icily. She asked, "So, what about you?" Vernon replied, "I went to bed at 11:30. I vaguely recall hearing John come in downstairs as I was drifting off to a deep sleep. That's the last thing I remember before awakening the next morning." He shook and his voice cracked and went saying, "I didn't notice anything wrong when I got up. I'm almost groggy before morning coffee." Nancy asked her father, "You don't believe John or I killed Mom, do you?" She nervously glanced at Constance and said, "Sorry, I didn't mean to imply you killed Mom." Nancy's cheeks were rosy red from embarrassment. Constance answered softly, "Don't worry about it, dear. I know what you're going through." Vernon appreciated her sister-in-law's gentling. I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Sister-in-law gently handling on his troubled daughter, but that did not stop him from saying, "You are only one who cannot account for this presence during the window of the time Melody left us." He could not bring himself to us with word murder again. Constance thought a long moment, sadness washing over her, and she looked at Vernon and Melody's sweet children. Before speaking, she silently cursed. "Oh, how I hate it's come to this." But then she spoke, saying to all of them, "No, I cannot account for my time. I don't have to, because it doesn't make any difference. The game is up." Guys, let's see if I'm right. Your solution was incorrect. Show suspect accusation chart. Who was it? See, told you. Vernon. Well, that was very hard. Go check out this website at 5 Minute Mystery. It is a very good website, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.